speakers actually are Suraia Sahar, who is the founder of Afghans for Peace, and her colleague Ali Ibrahimi. And Afghans for Peace is a global Afghan-led peace movement that is calling for an end to the NATO-led occupation of Afghanistan.
As I was introduced, my name is Suraia Sahar. I'm here with Afghans for Peace. And as was also mentioned, we are a global Afghan-led peace movement with branches currently in various cities throughout Canada, the US, and Afghanistan. Now, I'm here to give an Afghan face and voice to the discussion on the Afghanistan war. Most Afghans do not support it. To talk a little bit about my own experience, for years I had hopes and waited for our leaders in the Afghan community here in the West to come together and form a movement that spoke out against the NATO-led occupation and war in Afghanistan. Unfortunately, that didn't happen.
Yeah, put the microphone down.
It's not on. You have to press the button.
Testing to do. You can make that.
Press the button.
The batteries are dead. You just have to speak up.
I'll try to speak louder. Our people have been silenced, targeted, imprisoned, and even killed for speaking out before in the past. So although I can understand the fear, confusion, and hesitation of getting involved, it became very frustrating. As Malai Joya mentioned, tens of thousands of innocent civilians have been slaughtered with a rise in corruption and violence in the country. But I got tired of waiting. As soon as Obama announced sending 30,000 more troops, myself and Suraia, who is based in California, we got together and formed Afghans Against the War. We soon realized that our cause goes beyond just ending the war and calling for a withdrawal of troops. We wanted to continue working for peace and stability in Afghanistan and helping the Afghan people where they need it most. So our main focus in the last 2 years has been reaching out to the Afghan community, both globally and locally, creating awareness and mobilizing them. Because you can't have peace in Afghanistan without involving the Afghan people. So it is vitally important to empower the Afghan voice. I just came back from Washington last week where we represented AFP in several different events, panels, and lobby visits. And as I had said there, in the past 10 years we've heard different perspectives, from the media to politicians to the military, with very few of them being Afghan, not including elite warlords and corrupt politicians. That needs to change. There's been a lot of talk about withdrawing troops and what will happen when they do, but it's not that simple. It has to be done responsibly and with accountability. The Afghan people have a right to self-determination, but for that to happen, they need to be empowered first, so they don't have to rely on corrupt and problematic elements within the country. There must be a refocus on priorities. The people of Afghanistan need shelter, food, healthcare, education, and community-based sustainable development. They are struggling with worsening poverty. It saddens me to say that Afghanistan is still one of the worst places in the world for a mother to give birth and a child to be born. If their basic needs are met without the presence of a militant occupying force, they would be less dependent on groups like the Taliban, which most Afghans do not support or accept in the first place. These are actually the issues I talked about at the press conference in Washington, D.C. ABC News took a snippet of what I said and made it look like I was talking about the U.S. economy. So there's been a very dishonest and biased representation of the Afghan voice. One of our colleagues, Mike Skinner, who is a York University researcher, he visited Afghanistan a few years back to look for the so-called CETA projects in Afghanistan, CETA standing for Canadian International Development Agency. And since millions of dollars do go to them. What he found was an empty mud building with a sign. We have to ask ourselves, where does the money go? These are the questions we have to be asking. Now, we as Afghans for Peace were very fortunate enough to be working with another Afghan-led peace movement in Afghanistan, Bamyan, Afghanistan. They're called the Afghan Youth Peace Volunteers, and I encourage all of you to learn more about them and become familiar with their work, because at the end of the day, what you're listening to is the voice of young Afghans inside the country who are living the grand realities of the war. And listening to these kids in AYPV has been very inspiring and strengthened my hope. Afghans for Peace stands in solidarity with them for a nonviolent solution to Afghanistan's problems, and not just listening to what the Afghan people have to say, but taking action on it as well. Now, I'd like to just repeat something I had said at the War Voices panel in Washington, D.C. Although it is evident to all of you in this room who we are, what we represent, and why we're here, I just really want to say something if it hasn't been said already. And because I know it is not heard enough, thank you mainstream media. So I speak for so many people in my community who share our stance but are unable to speak out. I want to make it very clear, and I think it's appropriate to clarify this on the 10-year anniversary of the war. I am an Afghan. I am part of an Afghan-led peace movement. I do not support the US-led occupation and war in Afghanistan. I never supported the US-led occupation and war in Afghanistan. And what I want is a withdrawal of all foreign military troops from Afghanistan. That quote didn't exist before, it does now. So I'm very happy to be here at the CPA convention and represent Afghans for Peace, to have not just an individual Afghan voice heard, as has been the case in the past, but the voice of an Afghan-led peace movement. So thank you to all the organizations for putting this event together and giving us the opportunity to speak. And thank you all for being here.